And good afternoon, everyone. This is actually I was going to say this is probably going to be my favorite show, but I'm not going to say my favorite because all of my shows are my favorite. What I do want to say is that this is extremely important. So I'm going to tell you what I always tell my listeners on my radio show. And by the way, my radio show is the radio courtroom, while this is the TV courtroom. I'll talk more about the radio courtroom, but I mention that at this point because about a week or two before every primary election, about a week or two before every general election, on my radio courtroom show, I offer my endorsements. I decided a couple years ago to take that same idea from the radio courtroom and bring it to the TV courtroom. And that's exactly what I'm here to do today. Now, let me give you some background. Let me give you some context. The first thing you might ask is, okay, and by the way, folks, please get your cell phones out, get your iPads out, get your laptops, get all that stuff out. And just make sure I get my ID here together, my nameplate, Michael Cord, AKA, if I didn't say it, this is yours truly, attorney Michael Cord, AKA Michael X, AKA the angriest black man in America. And as I said at the outset, today's show is quite important. And I say that because the future of America is the issue. I know that sounds like hyperbole. I know that sounds like exaggeration, but people who were saying this before what happened in Francisco Franco's Spain, many people probably thought they were engaging in hyperbole. People who said what I'm saying before what happened in Mussolini's Italy, people probably thought they were engaging in hyperbole. And believe it or not, people who were saying what I'm saying before Hitler came to power in Germany, many people thought that they were engaging in hyperbole. But those same types of fascist tendencies, correction, I can't even say fascist tendency because it's fascism per se. When you have an authoritarian government who takes over by force, who is completely intolerant, who is nationalistic, then you have fascism. Well, that's exactly what almost happened on January 6th of 2021. Now think about this. Many people have described what happened on that fateful January 6th day perfectly. They called it a slow moving coup. And that's exactly what it was. Because often you think about a coup and you think of folks with guns coming in, taking over 24 hours. You have a newly installed self-proclaimed dictator. Yeah, that's the textbook type of thing, but it can also happen in slow motion. It can happen when white guys with guns and white guys with sticks and white guys with poles and white guys with mace and white guys with other banners in the name of white nationalism attack the United States Capitol, and not just attack the Capitol, but attack it in a conspiratorial and concerted manner. And not just a conspiratorial and concerted manner, but do it with a wink, correction, with a nod, correction, with direct involvement of various congressmen and women. So it's not just the hillbillies out with the weapons inside the Capitol. It's some of the folks who were elected to office that allowed this to happen, that encouraged this to happen, that promoted it. So when I call it, using the phrase that other folks have come up with, which I think is perfect, a slow-moving coup, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I won't be able to cover everything that I wrote about the upcoming primary election and everything about my endorsements in today's show because it's only a 60-minute show. But I'm going to refer to an article that I wrote in this past Sunday Tribune. every Sunday I write a column called Freedom's Journal. And in this weekly Freedom's Journal column in the Philadelphia Tribune, I focus on timely issues that affect the Black community and the woke white community. By the way, when I say Black community, I'm also including the brown brothers and sisters and others, because those in the brown community came from the Black continent. And they're only brown people for the most part because of where the quote unquote slave ship stopped. That's pretty much it. So I felt a need prior to every primary election and prior to every general election to give some advice. And right now you might be saying, well, I hear you, but who the hell are you? I mean, why should we accept your advice? Well, it's very simple. The reason you should accept my advice because I know what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying that in a way that might seem, well, actually, though, it might seem to you to be kind of arrogant, and maybe it is. But I'm going to explain to you why I say that I know what I'm talking about. In fact, I just referenced the article. That's the first thing I want you to do. I want you to make sure you get a copy of this past Sunday Tribune. And in the Sunday Tribune, I wrote my endorsements for the upcoming May primary election. And just go to phillytrib.com, as our producer extraordinaire, Roland, posted on the screen. Go to phillytrib.com, type in CORD, COARD, and type in endorsements. It'll come up. And I'll say to you now here, those of you among the TV Courtroom family, the very same thing I say to those in the radio Courtroom family. And by the way, those of you who are interested in the radio Courtroom, you can catch me every Saturday from 1 p.m. until 3 p.m. at WURD 96.1 FM. That's WURD 96.1 FM. And our website, as our producer shows you, is right up there, WURDradio.com. So I always do what I'm about to do now, what I've done for several years on the radio. And in that article in the Sunday Tribune, it not only tells you what my endorsements are, but it tells you why I am giving them to you. And it's not a matter of ego or arrogance. There's a reason why I'm doing it. But I want to make something crystal clear. Crystal clear. And I say this on my radio show. These endorsements are mine. They do not reflect necessarily the positions of any platform I'm speaking from or writing from. So when I write in the Tribune, that's not necessarily the endorsements of the Philadelphia Tribune. It's ownership, it's management, it's staff. When I talk about it on WRD, my endorsements, it's not the position, the endorsement, the opinion of the ownership, the management, and staff at WRD Radio. And the same thing applies here at PhillyCam. I'm just giving you my personal opinion based on what I see. So what I'm about to share with you is not necessarily the position of the ownership, the management, the staff, or any other person or entity connected with PhillyCam. This is just me, attorney Michael Cord, aka Michael X, aka the angriest Black man in America, sharing with you what I think you should know. And let me just break something down here. This is what I write in the article, and it's perfectly stated. So let me restate it verbatim. It says this: speaking of voting, whether it's voting for the right candidates or voting against the wrong ones, you got to vote. Then it goes on to say that's exactly why I put together my list of endorsed candidates for whom you should vote. Now, here's the important part. Why me, you might ask? Who do I think I am? You might ask. Why should you accept my endorsements? You might ask. Well, I go on to write the following. Here's why. To whom much is given, much is required. I have been a trial attorney for more than 25 years, an adjunct college professor of Black history for more than 15 years, a cultural/political activist since my college days, a radio/TV host for more than 15 years, a newspaper columnist for 6 years, and an African descendant throughout my entire lifetime. But not just that. Furthermore, In the words of the great Congressperson Shirley Chisholm, I am unbought and unbossed because I neither request nor accept money, jobs, grants, or any personal benefits whatsoever from any candidate or elected official. As a result of all those blessings, I have been put into a position where I can access and uncover enlightening information that can bring about justice and equity and eventually liberation for Black folks. So I want to be clear about that. When I give the endorsements, it's not for my personal benefit. I get nothing from these candidates, these elected officials, because I don't want anything from them. And like the great Shirley Chisholm said, I am therefore unbought and unbossed. In addition, people might say, okay, that's all good, but tell us more. Why are you specifically putting your endorsements out? Here's what I write in the Philadelphia Tribune. There are two reasons. The first is literally hundreds of voters always ask me to do so because they don't have the time or the resources to research. They don't really know who's a good candidate or a bad candidate. Why? Because they got so much stuff to do with the grind of their day-to-day jobs and their families and the stuff they got to go through. Well, I'm fortunate that I didn't have to go through any of that stuff. I've been blessed in terms of my personal life, in terms of my career, in terms of my money, that I have the freedom and the liberty and the time and the education to, again, not only find out who the good candidates are, but to find out who the not so good candidates are relative to the bad ones. So I would hope to be able to say, hey, vote for this person because they're the best. But sometimes I can't say that because they're not the best. But what I can say is vote for this person because he, she, or they is not nearly as bad as the other. And again, this is me talking. This is not the Tribune. This is not WRD, and it's certainly not Philly Can. I don't even use the guy's name. Let's call him Donald Dump. You know who I'm talking about. Donald Dump is a budding Francisco Franco, is a budding Mussolini, is a budding Hitler. In terms of his nationalism, in terms of his racism, in terms of his intolerance, all in terms of his support for violence and force, you put all that in a bowl together, you got a serving of fascism. And that's exactly what we have here. So I'm no big fan of President Joe Biden. I'm no big fan of Vice President Kamala Harris. But I would vote for them 1,000,000 times before I even think about getting fascism. That's what we would have. So what I'm trying to do is to give people the information that they need, because this information is designed to fight against racism. It's to fight against nationalism. It's to fight against sexism. It's to fight against misogyny. It's to fight against homophobia. It's to fight against Islamophobia. All the racist stuff, all the bigoted stuff, all the classist stuff that America is built on, when I give you my endorsements, it's designed to fight against it. And like I said, sometimes I wish I could go to the cemetery and dig Malcolm X out of his grave and run him for president, and then he win. That ain't gonna happen. I wish I could go to Cuba and get Assata Shakur and bring her back here and run her for president. That ain't gonna happen. So the hardcore revolutionaries, the leftists, the progressives, I mean, well, at a certain point in society, numerically speaking, can't win. Numerically speaking, in terms of their ideology, it's great. I support it. But if I knew that tomorrow I could dig Malcolm X from his grave and reanimate him so that he's a living human being and run him for president against, let's say, Donald Trump in 2024, I wouldn't do it, because numerically Malcolm X can't win. But Donald Trump could. So instead of me getting a revolutionary to run who I love, I'll take a moderate who can win. because that's what's going to happen. It's either going to be a Democrat or Republican for the next 15, 20 years or so. Eventually, we'll get a progressive. Eventually, we'll get somebody who's revolutionary. But right now, that ain't going to happen. So right now, we got to put the fire out. And I wish we can put the fire out with a revolutionary candidate for president and win. We can't. I wish we could put the fascist fire out by running a revolutionary candidate for Senate or the House and win. But we can't. I wish I could run a revolutionary candidate for governor or for state attorney general or for mayor, or maybe city council might work, maybe even mayor, because on the city level, you can get closer to the candidates and potentially win, especially in a place like Philadelphia. That's why we got somebody like Larry Krasner as DA. But once you get outside of the local Philadelphia area and you're dealing with Pennsylvania, by the way, folks, if you think that Pennsylvania is Philadelphia, you're sadly mistaken. Pennsylvania has always been predominantly Republican in its voting. Pennsylvania has always been in bed with the dumpsters. So if you're talking about beating the dumpsters, you got to beat them numerically. Again, ideologically, in terms of running revolutionary candidates on the national level and the state level, at least right now, it's too dangerous. The stakes are too high. Prime example, and I'm going to touch on this now, but come back to it later. U.S. Senate. I'm endorsing John Fetterman. There's some stuff he did as lieutenant governor, and well, not so much lieutenant governor. He did great stuff, lieutenant governor. When he was mayor of Braddock and living in Braddock out in the rural area of Pennsylvania, he did some stuff, one thing in particular, to a black man that is just unforgivable. So what am I going to do? And then there's another candidate who's running. He's currently a state representative, Malcolm Kenyatta, who politically I love. But I'm a realist. I want to put up the candidate that can beat the fascist in the general election. I want to put up the candidate, even if I got to hold my nose, I want to put up the candidate in the primary election that can beat the fascist in the general election. I could tell you I love this other revolutionary or love this other progressive or this leftist, but it's me and maybe 50 other people. And then we get crushed by the Republican in the general election. And what do we got? We got nothing. So sometimes you got to think pragmatically before you think ideologically. I am a Pan-African socialist. You can't get any more revolutionary than that. So why did I vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? Well, I voted for them in 2020 for the same reason that the greatest living revolutionary in America today, Angela Davis, voted for Biden and Harris. I don't care how revolutionary you think you are. I don't care how much of a leftist you think you are. I don't care how much of a progressive you think you are. You ain't nowhere near Angela Davis. Angela Davis was facing the death penalty for allegedly giving guns to black men to take over a courtroom. So you know her role with the Black Panther Party. You know all that. And this hardcore leftist / socialist / communist revolutionary voted for Joe Biden and voted for Kamala Harris. Why? Because she saw the fascism as the alternative. She held her nose and did the pragmatic thing. And maybe later we'll be able to move toward a more liberal candidate. Maybe later we'll be able to move toward a more progressive candidate. Maybe later we'll be able to move toward a revolutionary candidate. It's like a ladder. I wish we could jump from the bottom, this conservatism, up to revolutionary and just pass all the rungs in between. But yo, this is America. This ain't Philadelphia. We can run some revolutionary city council candidates and win. And I'd be the first to join you. I'd be the first to offer a financial contribution. We ran a progressive DA and won. We might even be able to run a progressive candidate for mayor and win. But that's Philadelphia. We can't do that statewide for a governor. We can't do that nationwide for a senator. We can't do that nationwide for a presidential candidate. Why? Because Philadelphia ain't America. Brother Malcolm has this great thing. He talks about the ballot or the bullet. You know about that. And for me, it's one or the other. You know, when I talk to my revolutionary comrades and they say, "Oh, I'm not voting because voting is a fool's game, that this whole system is corrupt and evil and wicked, and for me to participate in the election, then I'm participating in corruption and wickedness." I'm like, okay. I say to them, I hear you. I hear you. You want change, don't you? Yeah, I want hardcore revolutionary change. Okay. So you say you can't get it through the ballot. There's only one other option, the bullet. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not advocating that anybody take up arms. That's violent, that's illegal, that's unnecessary, and more important, it's impractical. Because for every gun we progressives and liberals and revolutionaries might have, you can bet the hillbillies out in these sticks, they got 1 million guns, so we'd be slaughtered. But my point is not that. My point is it's just not the right thing to do. So if you want change, it's one of two ways you get it. You get it through the ballot, voting for the best candidate who can win, or by the bullet, violent revolutionary change. My hardcore revolutionary comrades, none of them doing that. None of them going out there and taking it to the man and doing what they claim needs to be done. So you're just talking. If you ain't voting and you ain't taking up arms, and by the way, I want to be clear, I'm not advocating people take up arms, they should not. But my point is, if you claim you want change, there's only two ways to get it, the ballot or the bullet. You ain't taking the up no arms, so you got to use the ballot. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to tell you about that. Again, it's not about voting for the candidate that you love. It's not about a litmus test. It's not about purity, ideological purity. It's about winning. It's about stopping the fascists. Because it's not just Donald Trump on the federal level. They got governors and secretary of states and attorney generals and state senators and state reps going along with that. So you go from the federal fascism to the state fascism. And it's not just state. In some counties, in some cities, you got to deal with that. So what do? You engage in your ideological purity and you refuse to vote for a Biden or Kamala because they're part of the system, and then you allow Trump to win? Well, you just made things worse. You're not a progressive. You're not a liberal. You're not a revolutionary if the practical effect of what you do is counter-revolutionary. Let me repeat that. You're not revolutionary if the real world practical effect of what you do is counter-revolutionary. And it's counter-revolutionary to allow a Donald Trump and his ilk to take over the federal government, the state government, and the city governments. It's as simple as that. And I know many of my revolutionary comrades might not want to hear it, and some have called me out on it, but the truth is the light. Those right-wing maggots love it when somebody who claims to be a progressive or a revolutionary throws his or her or their hat in the ring. Because sadly, the majority, especially the majority of the voters, ain't feeling that. I'm feeling it. I love it. I go past being a moderate. I go past being a liberal. I go past being a progressive. I go past being a leftist. I'm at the revolutionary stage. And I'm sitting here saying, okay, I'm at the revolutionary stage. How do I bring about revolution? Can I get it tomorrow? Okay, if I get it tomorrow, I'm signing up for that. Okay, I can't get it tomorrow. Can I get it the next day? Nah. What about the day after? And I'm finding out in the real world, it's going to take me a couple years, maybe even longer. So I got to slow walk them. It's like the tortoise versus the hare. I can speed and run my head into a wall and crash. Or I can strategically say, okay, it's like chess. I don't really like this move, but I'll make this move today so I can make this other move tomorrow. And that's exactly where we are. So let me just go through my article. The time now is 3:54. I got about 36 minutes left, and I'm going to squeeze all this in. By the way, those of you who want the specifics of what I'm talking about, I know I'm yelling and I'm screaming and I'm ranting and I'm raving and I'm venting. I know all that. I was going to say I apologize for it, but it would be a false apology. I don't apologize. because this is some serious stuff. Like I said, Italy wasn't fascist until it was. Spain wasn't fascist until it was. Germany wasn't fascist until it was. We got to do something now so that history books 50 years from now don't say, damn, people didn't see what was coming in America. And in 2024, well, in the 2022 midterms, the Republicans took over Congress. In 2024, Republicans took over the White House. And in the years between and after, on the various state levels, the fascists took over in the state capitals. And what do we got? We got South Africa. We got Italy. We got Spain. We got Germany. We got The Handmaid's Tale. I don't even need to tell you, because you already know what happened with the whole notion of, they call it the right to abortion. It's not about abortion rights. They call it women's rights. It's not about women's rights. It's about the human being's right to control his, her, their body. That's what it's all about. It has nothing to do with abortion, nothing to do with pro-choice or anti-choice. The question is, does the human being have the right to privacy over his, her, or their body? Right to get pregnant or not get pregnant? Right to have an abortion or not to have an abortion? So again, when people call it abortion rights, that's like you're telling women, hey, women, I know you want to get an abortion. Some of them don't, but they have the right to decide because it's their body. And the fact that the U.S. Supreme Court says, well, Roe versus Wade was improperly decided because there's nothing in the Constitution that talks about a woman's right to choose. Well, there's nothing in the Constitution that talks about the wickedness of slavery or child labor or anything like that. It's supposed to be about evolving standards of decency. That, okay, people might want to make the argument that there's certain things they didn't really appreciate in the 1600s that they did understand later in the 1700s, so they changed their behavior. Certain things in the 1700s they didn't realize until the 1800s, so they changed their behavior. Certain things in the 1800s they didn't realize, so they changed behavior in 1900, and so forth and so on. I got to tell you, there's some stuff I said about women when I was a dumb kid in college as a frat boy. I thought it was cute. I thought it was cool. And when I found out that it wasn't cute, it wasn't cool, I checked myself. I called myself and I changed my behavior. But more important, I changed my thought process. Why? Because it's about evolving standards of decency. But that's not what's happening in America today. We're going back. When they talk about MAGA, M-A-G-A, Make America Great Again, America was never great if you're Black. America was never great if you're a woman. America was never great if you're gay, lesbian, transgender, if you're poor, any of that stuff. If you're not a middle class to upper class white man in America, then America was never great. So what do we do to change that? We do what Brother Malcolm said. He's right there whispering to me saying, tell him, Mike. And I'm trying to tell him, Brother Malcolm, he's trying to tell us it's the battle of the bullet. And right now, he's not using his weapon. He's looking out there to see who's running for office and who can vote for. That's what he's doing right there. He's holding his weapon when the time comes, because eventually there might be a time. So he needs to be ready. You know what they say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Well, Malcolm is staying ready, but he's also peering out the window to see what's going on politically and what can be done instead of being forced to use that weapon. So anyway, I'm about to share with you my endorsements. And as I told you, the reason why I'm even doing this whole endorsement thing, the reason why I even started doing the endorsement thing, because I've been fortunate. I've been blessed. I've been able to get a good education at Masterman. I've been able to get a great education at Cheney. I've been able to get a great legal education at Ohio State School of Law. I've been able to get money to have the freedom to chill and read books and watch documentaries. But most important, thanks to the ancestors, I've been blessed by keeping my Black mind together. Even when I was in law school, I didn't go to law school to make a lot of money. That wasn't my motivation. When I passed the bar exam, I didn't seek to work at some big firm and make a lot of money. That was never my motivation. Because if I ask you now, who was the richest lawyer in Philadelphia 10 years ago? You wouldn't know. 30 years ago, you wouldn't know. Even now, you wouldn't know. But you know Cecil B. Moore. Why do you know Cecil B. Moore? Because he realized the need to be a black lawyer to fight for change rather than many of these black lawyers you see on TV today who only run around to get big money from settlements when black people get beaten to death or beaten down, and then they come out like vultures and vampires and suck the blood of the black family and then go on to the next victim. These lawyers, instead of them fighting to change the system, they fight to benefit from the system. Instead of them talking about getting a 40% cut when George Floyd is killed by a white cop, they should be talking about laws nationwide to lock up white cops, laws nationwide to take the cop's paycheck and make him pay most of that judgment. So if a family member of mine gets killed by the cops and we sue them, not only are we suing the police department in the city, but that cop, whatever he makes, $50,000 a year, he got to give 80% of his salary to my family because he killed my son or my daughter, niece and nephew. These black lawyers, they ought to be making significant change in the system than trying to benefit from the system. I'm not saying these lawyers, black, white, and others, I'm not saying that they like it when black people get killed by the cops, but they do kind of like it because they benefit from it. And if they have the resources that they have, instead of them fighting to get the case and to get a financial settlement, why don't they seek reform in the lawsuit? Don't sue just to get X amount of dollars for the family and a 40% cut of that goes to you, but seek to lock cops up who do that stuff. Seek to bankrupt cops who do that stuff. Make changes in the law so that cops have to pay out of their own pocket and have to pay out of their own time by going to prison. But many of these lawyers don't want to change because they benefit from it. But my point is, they need to be like a Cecil B. Moore. Cecil B. Moore died while living in North Philly. So he didn't have a whole bunch of money. But that's a good thing. You got to be using your education and your resources for the people. And I'm nowhere near a Cecil B. Moore. But what I can tell you about me and Cecil is that I try to follow in his footsteps. I try to ask myself, just like a real Christian would say to himself, herself, or themselves, what would Jesus do? And then that Christian would do what Jesus would do. Well, as a lawyer, I was asking myself, what would Cecil do? And whatever I think Cecil will do, then I'll try to do that same thing. Or what would a Charles Bowser do? That's exactly what I would try to do. What would a Hardy Williams try to do? All these great black lawyers who use their intellect and their resources to advance the plight of black people and poor people, and not through self-aggrandizement by becoming rich themselves. So having said that, let me just go through this article. I know you got your iPhones out and your iPads out and your other cell phones and your laptops, and you might be watching on TV. You got a pencil and a pad. You got to write this stuff down because I'm going to give you the endorsements. So quickly, let me just go through what I wrote in the article. Here's how I started. I'm just going to summarize this because you're going to go get the article yourself. How? By going to phillytrib.com, type in CORD, C-O-A-R-D, type endorsements, or if you want, you can email me. You can email me at michaelcordx@gmail.com. MICHAELCOARD, the letter X, michaelcordx@gmail.com, and say, yo, Mike, I saw you on TV. I heard you talking about this stuff. Email me a copy of that Tribune article. I will. Or you can catch me on social media. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram at Michael Cord. Instagram, Michael Cord, Twitter. That's all you got to do. So you just reach out to me and I'll be happy to give you a copy of this article. Here we go. We got about 26 minutes left. Here's how the article starts. Every election is important, but apart from the elections that occurred shortly after passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments in 1865, 1868, and 1870, respectively, the most important one is every single one that has taken place and will take place following the murderous, seditious, and treasonous coup attempt against democracy itself, carried out by the racist, fascist, misogynistic MAGAts on January 6, 2021, at the US Capitol. Let me just pause right there, because if you haven't already begun to appreciate how serious, how close we were to a fascist government being sworn into office on January 6, 2021, you weren't paying attention. Because think about it. Those thugs took over the Capitol. Those thugs tried to get into the offices of many of the elected officials. Those thugs talked about hanging the person who was to constitutionally certify the election. What if they had been able to kick in those doors and kidnap Nancy Pelosi? What if they had gotten Mike Pence, who's just like Dump for the most part, but he just has a better suit and a better education, but pretty much the same kind of guy. But for whatever reason, he decided not to be a part of it. But what if, follow me on this, what if after breaching the US Capitol, as they did, after beating up cops, killing one, as they did, killing a couple ultimately, as they did, what if they had succeeded in kicking in the office doors of many of the elected officials, Nancy Pelosi in particular, and held her hostage at gunpoint? What if Donald Trump had gotten Mike Pence to refuse to certify the results? What if a majority of all the congresspersons, because many of them were in bed with us, but a majority had joined in? There would have been a constitutional crisis. And the question would have been, okay, who does the military listen to? They listen to the guy who technically was still president because the other guy, Biden, hadn't been sworn in yet. Will they listen to the guy who had won the election and would be sworn in a couple of weeks? There would have been a big constitutional crisis, and the military could have sided with Trump. And if the military sided with Trump, we would have had a South Africa apartheid. We would have had a fascist Spain. We would have had a fascist Italy. We would have had a fascist Germany. We would have had all that right here in America in 2021. So I don't want you all to think that this thing didn't almost happen. It almost happened at the point where you got to check out the HBO series, The Handmaid's Tale. It was almost The Handmaid's Tale. Think about that. It was almost South African apartheid. It was almost fascist Spain and Germany and Italy. It was almost all of that. So what do we do? What do we do to make sure that that doesn't happen? Like I said, I'm no fan of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but right now they're the only life-saving rope we had to latch on to. That's what we got to do. We got to do. And Joe, again, not my favorite guy, but he's done some stuff. I mean, what about Ketanji Brown Jackson? I mean, that's a major move. And as a lawyer, I can tell you, when you can get the right people in the Supreme Court, you're halfway there. We got Brown versus Board of Education in 1954 because of that. So who nominates lawyers or judges to become Supreme Court justices? Do you want a Biden and Harris nominating them? Or do you want a Dump and Pence or a Dump and Giuliani? So remember, it's the ballot or the bullet. And I'm really talking to my revolutionary comrades because I know you're fed up with this system. I know you hate the corruption in the system. I know all that because I'm one of you. But I'm trying to figure out, what do we do about it? Do we sit around and mouth what we recall about the speeches and writings of Mao or of any of our ideological heroes, certainly Karl Marx, anybody else that we can think of? Yeah, we might sound deep and profound and intellectual, but what is that going to do to stop fascism that almost took over on January 6, 2021? We got to do something, and the something is voting. So here we go. Let me just quickly go through my information, and at the end of it, I'll give you my endorsements. So the first thing I said is that we came damn near close to fascism in America. And it's not hyperbole, because every other country, so-called first world country, wasn't fascist until it was. America could have joined that club. Not going to say that it would have joined that club, because it would have become an updated 1939 to 1975 nationalistic Spain, a reconstituted 1948-1990 apartheid South African government, and a real-life Handmaid's Tale. You got to watch that TV show. I almost called it a documentary. It's not a documentary, but it could be, in terms of women being really second, actually third-class citizens. So after I talk about what it could have been, here's what I write. Be afraid. Be very afraid. And then vote. I talked to you about Malcolm said, battle the bullet. So everybody who's awake, everybody who has some empathy for other people, anybody who's a caring human being wants to do the right thing. Well, the dumpsters and the MAGAts and the right-wing folks and the fascists, they don't give a damn about the masses. They don't care about anything but themselves and getting richer and richer every day. So those of us who care about people, we don't have to agree with everything ideologically, but we do have to agree with one thing. We got to stop fascism. We got to stop fascism. I'm not feeling capitalism right now. Never did. And became woke. For me, it was all about socialism. But if I have to work with a capitalist to fight against fascism, I'm working with the capitalists. I'm not really feeling moderates. They seem too lukewarm to me, same as liberals. But if I got to work with moderates and liberals to stop fascism, then I'm working with them. So it's not about my Pan-African socialism taking the top position. It's my opposition to fascism taking the top position. And then I can debate with the legitimate Republicans, and I can debate with the capitalists and the moderates and liberals later on. We got to put the fire out, and the fire is here. We got to put it out. I was about to say the fire is coming. It's not coming. The fire is here. That's why I say be afraid. Be very afraid. Then I go and talk about Malcolm X and the battle of the bullet. None of y'all ain't picking up no guns, so stop it with all that nonsense. So the only option you have, if you ain't picking up no guns for the bullet, is the ballot. And you got to think strategically with the ballot. Don't think about who you like. Don't think about who your heart is with. Think about who can beat the fascist. My brother, I might love him more than I love my uncle. But somebody got to go out there and fight that bully in the street. My brother, let's say he's 5'8", 150 pounds, and never had a fight in his life. But my uncle is 6'2", 250 pounds, and boxes every day. I'd like to say my big brother went out there and beat the bully, but in reality, I know he just can't. My brother got heart, he got courage, but he's just unable physically to beat the bully. My uncle, I only like him too much. But I know my uncle can stop the bully from beating me up again and from breaking out my windows and coming and just destroying my home. I'm not really feeling my uncle, but he can beat the bully. I love my brother. He can't beat the bully. So the question is not who I love. The question is who can beat the bully. And in this case, the bully is the fascist. And that's why when I tell you who these candidates are that I'm endorsing, they can beat the fascists. And we can debate with these victorious moderates later, as long as we can join them today and beat the fascists. All right, here we go. Time now for 14. So I mentioned Malcolm and the battle of the bullet. I go on to say, if revolution is not immediately attainable, the next best thing is substantive systemic reform. And I hate to even sound like I'm advocating for mere reform, but I am, because I have to, because that's the only thing available. That's why I say if revolution is not immediately attainable right now, the next best thing is substantive systemic reform. And that starts with stopping the fascists. I write here that I wish I could vote for Brother Malcolm, a Brother Nat Turner, a Sister Assad, a Sister Angela Davis. Two of them are dead. The others are just numerically unable to outnumber the other candidate to get the votes that we need. The other candidate is the fascist candidate. We got to beat them. That's why I say we need clear-headed, pragmatic solutions. And that is one that pursues substantive, systemic reform by what? first defeating the racist, fascist, misogynistic, MAGAt Republicans. I then going to say that I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden, not a big fan of Kamala Harris, but I knew they could beat Trump and Pence. And because they were the only ones that could beat, Bernie's my man. Of all the candidates who were running, for me, it was Bernie. I wanted Bernie. But I know it wasn't enough of us who support Bernie in this election. And I say this election because the stakes were too high. I didn't love, in fact, I despised both Bushes and certainly Nixon and Reagan. But if you think that the Bushes and the Nixon and Reagan are worse than this orange Mussolini, you haven't been following history. So we could play around with stuff with some other Republican candidates. I don't like what they did. I despise what they did. When you talk about the fascism at the gate, this is real. You're talking about the fire in the house, this is real. I go on to say that I'm not a fan of President Joe Biden or Vice President Kamala Harris, but I'd vote for them again in a heartbeat over Donald Trump, Mike Pence, and any other MAGA Republicans on the federal, state, or local level. Any other decision, like casting your vote during the upcoming urgent primary and general midterm elections, including the ones on May 17 and November 8, only for the candidates who pass your stringent, progressive, revolutionary purity litmus test, but who can't meet a MAGA Republican opponent in general election, that's counterproductive. That's clearly counterproductive. You're talking about you want change, but you're voting for indirectly, you're voting for a fascist, Hillary Clinton. Y'all feel bad about what y'all did to Hillary now, don't y'all? Hillary was certainly not my favorite. But Hillary versus Trump, all those progressives, all those liberals, all those leftists who said that they despised Hillary's politics and therefore wouldn't vote for her, how you feel now? And again, Hillary's not a savior. Joe Biden's not a savior. Kamala's not a savior. But any one of them compared to the orange Nazi, you got to be out of your mind if you don't do the right thing. Article goes on to read as follows. That's why you must vote for the candidate who has the best chance of beating the MAGA Republicans, even if you're repulsed by something that candidate has done. I don't have enough time to go into it, but Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, back in 2013, he pulled a gun on a black man, and he claimed that the black man appeared threatening or was suspicious of something. That was a bunch of BS. In that case, Fetterman was pretty much doing his white man thing. And tragically, fortunately, it didn't turn out to be what it could have been, but it could have been a horrible Ahmaud Arbery situation. White man, not a cop, with a gun, confronting a black man who's jogging. Yeah, that was basically the scenario that John Fetterman found himself in Braddock in 2013. And that I'm repulsed by that. But I voted for him for lieutenant governor because I knew his politics. I knew his politics on important issues like creating a livable wage. Fetterman is for that and has been pushing for that all his political career, supporting unions, saving the environment, protecting a woman's right to choose, respecting immigrant rights, protecting restorative justice by ending mass incarceration, issuing equitable pardons, and providing for reentry programs. All those things Fetterman does. So I despise what he did as a white man with the gun, and it could have turned out to be tragic. But you know what? It's a bigger issue here. Who among the Democratic candidates in the primary for U.S. Senate can beat the Republican in the general? That's what it's all about. It's not whether or not Fetterman did some dumb racist white man stuff, because I truly believe he did. But check this out. The black man who John Fetterman pulled the gun on is a man that people don't talk about. His name is Christopher Mayares. And Christopher Mayares said, yeah, Fetterman is lying about what happened. Fetterman came at me like I was a thug with a gun and nothing could be further from the truth. But guess what Christopher Mayares said? He said, despite that, one, he forgives John Fetterman, and two, he would vote for John Fetterman. The black guy who could have possibly been shot by Fetterman says he would vote for him because that black man, Christopher Myers, realized the bigger picture. And because politically, John Fetterman has always done the right thing. Yeah, he did his racist white man thing there, but what's the bigger deal? What he's trying to do now for black people and brown people and poor people, that's why I, just like the black guy who's the victim of Fetterman, I'm endorsing John Fetterman. So my point is, it's not so much about who I like or dislike, it's about who can protect me from that bully outside. I love my brother, but he ain't big and strong enough. I don't really like my uncle, but he's big and strong enough. And he's much better than that bully out there, taking my lunch money and breaking at my windows and attacking my house and my mother. So I'm going with the person who can win, even though I'm not feeling him. I want to beat the bully in the street. I want to beat the fascist who's trying to get into the White House or the state capitol or the mayor's office. So anyway, I go on to state that who am I to suggest who you should vote for? I already told you that. I'm just a black guy who's always lived his life for black people. I'm a socialist guy who's always lived his life for poor people. I'm a political activist who has never asked for or received any political benefits or breaks or favors from politicians. I'm just a black guy who, even the people who don't like me, respect me. They're like, yeah, Mike Court, he's real. He crazy with that black stuff, but he's real. He means what he says about black people. He means what he says about poor people. He's not in it for the money. He don't need this hassle. He got money himself. He can just leave the country and do his thing somewhere. I don't want to do that. I want to fight for black people because black people fought for me. Black people, my elders, my ancestors, they fought for me to get into Masterman, to get into Cheney, to get into law school, and I owe them. Having said that, I'm also, like the great congressperson Shirley Chisholm said, I'm unbought and unbossed. I don't get anything from politicians. I don't want anything from politicians. I simply want to beat the fascists. Here we go. U.S. Senate, John Fetterman. Simple as that. I like the black guy who's running, but he can't win. But John Fetterman can beat the fascist in November. Vote for John Fetterman, U.S. Senate. U.S. House, Dwight Evans, District 3, Mary Gay Scanlon, District 5. Once again, United States House, Dwight Evans, District 3, Mary Gay Scanlon, District 5. Keep it moving. We got about 4 minutes left. Governor, Josh Shapiro. I'm really not feeling Josh Shapiro in terms of what he did to try to undermine Larry Krasner, my man, Larry Krasner. But Josh Shapiro has done more than any elected official in modern Pennsylvania history to stop the fascists from undermining Pennsylvania electoral politics. Let me repeat that. Josh Shapiro has done more to stop the fascists from undermining Pennsylvania electoral politics than anybody. I'm not feeling Josh Shapiro on the death penalty and other issues, but right now, we got to beat the fascists. Josh Shapiro has already been beating the fascists and can beat them in the general election. Vote for Josh Shapiro for governor. Lieutenant Governor, Austin Davis. Lieutenant Governor, Austin Davis. State Senate. All of these candidates here are running unopposed, but still they've done good work, primarily for Cheney. So I'm saying vote for these 3 state Senate candidates. Art Haywood, District 4. Anthony Williams, District 8. Katie Muth, District 44. Once again, state Senate, Art Haywood, District 4. Anthony Williams, District 8. Katie Muth, District 44. That's state Senate. State House, again, many of these are running unopposed, but some are not. Here's some folks you really need to support. Saja Blackwell. This sister is the real deal, and she can do much better than what we're dealing with now in terms of our representation from that district. So vote for Saja Blackwell, District 10. Great candidate. Malcolm Kenyatta. That's for the state house, not for U.S. Senate, but re-elect Malcolm Kenyatta, District 181 in the state house. That brother does some great work as a state rep in District 181. He can win. Vote for him for state house. But remember, vote for John Fetterman for the U.S. Senate. Let's continue with the state house. We also got Benjamin Waxman, District 182. Ben is a good guy. He's a cool white guy. He's enlightened. He's progressive. He's woke. He's a great candidate. Vote for Benjamin Waxman, District 182. And again, some of these folks, other folks might be unopposed. Jordan Harris. The reason why Cheyney University is still alive in large part is thanks to Jordan Harris, District 186. Rick Fredusky, progressive, enlightened, woke. Vote for Rick Fredusky, District 188. Joanna McClinton, District 191, a lawyer, an activist, a serious sister who always does the right thing. Vote for Joanna McClinton, District 191. Morgan Cephas. The very same thing I just said about Joanna McClinton applies to Morgan Cephas, District 192. Progressive, enlightened, and about the work of the people. Let's keep it moving. Donna Bullock, again, a thorough sister, does the right thing for Black folks, for Philadelphians, for everybody throughout Pennsylvania. Vote for Donna Bullock, District 195. I got about a minute left. Derisha Parker, District 198. Derisha Parker, again, like the other sisters, always doing the right thing. She deserves your vote. Derisha Parker, District 198. Stephen Kinsey, District 201. He's a fraternity brother of mine, always fighting for Cheyney, always fighting for higher education, always doing the right thing. But I got to say, my favorite out of all candidates for any office, State Representative Christopher Rabb, District 200. You got to reelect that guy. He's being attacked by some opponents who are using some dirty tricks and just doing some horrible things. I got to tell you, Christopher Rabb is the smartest, wokest, most eloquent, most intellectual, revolutionary activist that I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Vote for Christopher Rabb, District 200. Let me repeat that. Vote for Christopher Rabb, District 200. Unlike many other candidates, he's being attacked by opponents with political dirty tricks. Don't be fooled. This guy, Christopher Rabb, is the real deal. He's come up with some ingenious ideas to make things right for Black folks throughout the city of Philadelphia and for all folks at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Vote for Christopher Rabb, District 200. Ballot questions. I don't have enough time to go into it, but there are 4 ballot questions. Vote yes for all of them. The first one deals with expanding the zoning board of adjustment. That's important because it'll bring some community activists on the board. Vote yes on zoning board of adjustment, expanding the membership. The number 2 and 3 deals with gender neutral language, one in the city charter, the other in the educational supplement. So questions 2 and 3 votes yes to support gender neutral language. And finally, number 4, whether the Fair Housing Commission should be included in the city charter. That would give them a little more legitimacy. So yes for that. But the key thing, U.S. Senate, John Fetterman, Governor Josh Shapiro, State House, Christopher Rabb. Check out my article in the Philadelphia Tribune for more information. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want to thank our producer extraordinaire, Roland, for making this thing go smoothly. You all have a safe weekend and make sure you do the right thing. Thank you all very much.